more control. All right, we are recording this call so we can have Rachel participate as well, or at least get familiar with what we are doing. So after going through each comment in the discussion issue for platform direction, I wanted to highlight a couple of items that I think align with what we previously talked about, and then also what we want to achieve. So I kind of isolated them in groups of, we want this new shiny thing to do, right? Like want to future-proof ourselves. And then we want to address something that we already know is a gap in how we do things, processes, how we measure things, and so on. And the third item is how do we ensure that we stay ahead of the growth on all levels, right? Like that includes, scaling, but it also includes how do we add new services, what kind of cost does that incur, and so on. It also touches on performance. It touches on the items that we care a lot about in the day-to-day. And then the fourth group is basically related to the teams themselves, right? Like the team well-being, what do we want to actually address and how do we want to address it? And I kind of wanted to, if you give me 1 sec, I have a note on this somewhere. I wanted to, I had this thought exercise of how some of the projects that folks mention in the issue actually align to any of these themes. So first of all, I want to one more time highlight how amazing how much of an amazing discussion we had in the issue. I think everyone individually who contributed to the issue brought an interesting perspective for sure, but what really struck me is that we are actually far more aligned than I anticipated when I was going into this issue, because I think folks are recognizing the challenges. One thing that kind of did catch me a bit by surprise is that there is no unified call for addressing technical debt. Like it is fairly balanced towards delivery, which is, I guess, okay, because that's where we accrued most technical debt, because we were purposeful about it. Yeah, so basically in the first item, enable self-servicing for stage group teams from commit to release. To me, that feels like a combo project between delivery and scalability, where we can create a sort of roadmap of how would we organize infrastructure in a different way, which would eventually enable folks in scalability and also in delivery to create their own frameworks to serve different purposes, right? Like the delivery to enable self-deployment and scalability to continue supporting the error budget work, right? Like how do you actually go from the moment of noticing that something is affecting your error budget to fixing it yourself without significant involvement from scalability. And then that also, to me, feels like it aligns to fully automating the rest of the deployment process, so enabling CD in full on .com. It's one of the self-components or subcomponents, because there is a dependency on enabling that to actually moving further. And then for scalability, this would be a second theme, which would be how precise are error budgets, right? Because we keep having discussions with random teams about, well, this endpoint is not covered, or, I want to set a different threshold for this service versus, or this endpoint versus that endpoint, right? Because we have teams that are significantly, or stage groups that contain significantly different endpoints that they own, and they want to actually address it differently. So scalability can actually help in the way of enabling you know, the infrastructure we built, right? Like the platform we built around error budgets to address some of those things that stage groups regularly mention. So I'm going to stop here, and like I want to hear what you all think about this. Like, does this make sense, right? If I were to set it on the platform level and say, all right, this is the direction, and I want scalability and delivery team to create projects that will drive towards this goal, would you be able to recognize that? And would you be able to do something with this?
I think the just on the self-service for stage group teams to commit to release, like it feels to me like that's a more long-term goal. And like you hinted at this, the short-term goal is like completely automated end-to-end release. Like we have to have, that's a prerequisite in every way on the next step. Like we have to have that in place. So yeah, it's
that's
like
not that far away though. Like that's
okay.
Definitely this year.
Right,
okay.
but the point with this is, if the two of you are already aligning on this and saying, well, this is a prerequisite to everything, then I know what's an easy OKR for this quarter. Right? Like for delivery, I know that it's an easy OKR. I'm not saying that you should set that, Amy, right now. I'm just saying that if the two of you are already aligning that this is a prerequisite to anything else that we work within this direction item, then great, we can then use that as a prioritization item and say, all right, if this is a prerequisite, we're going to set that as a direction for 1 or 2 quarters so that we can unlock some of the other work towards the end of the year.
I wonder about the naming of this group. So this fits really well with delivery. I mean, I'll let Rachel kind of have the final word on that, but like, I wonder how much that like scalability would kind of naturally say, here's a error budget project that would fit with this, like this direction. I guess maybe I'm thinking like it's kind of the error budgets are sort of the bit afterwards, right? That this thing is in production and living.
Yeah, good point. So it's not release, there is like a step after it.
Yeah, it's like the maintenance, like sort of phase, right? Like,
But wait, can you kind of explain that? Why is it an afterward step?
Just in the naming of this, we've got enable self-service and stage groups from commit to release. But actually, I think like a lot of like the self-service actions we want to is the post-release. Exactly. It's like the CD versus DevOps.
Sorry, I didn't get that. Yeah.
It's a good point.
It's like the ownership, right? Like maybe it's like self-serve ownership of like.
What's the name of the GitLab? Something to production.
Idea to production.
Idea to production. Can we say?
It stops at the same level, right? Like that's the point. Like release or production, it stops at the same level. There is a step afterwards.
Yeah. Operation from commit to
use.
This is a bit open-ended though.
Yeah, I mean, the word definitely doesn't fit, but it's that's what we are trying to highlight, right? Like that someone uses whatever people have built. Right, so I guess the name is contentious here. So I'm going to put this from commit to release as in parentheses, and I'm going to highlight and say edit. But the spirit of it is there, right? Like if I were to add this to the handbook and say, this is what I want scalability and delivery teams to align to, you would know how to actually go and drive the next steps, right?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
One bit, I suppose, that kind of always sits a little bit on the side, and I think it's why delivery haven't done a great job of fulfilling it, is dog fooding kind of needs to go in there somewhere as well. Like, it fits in that there's a kind of having everything, like we endlessly have to maintain stuff where we're not using GitLab product. Then I wonder if there's also something we should mention there about this, the kind of expectation that the thing that we hand over for self-serve is going to be, GitLab product wherever possible.
I know what you mean, but I think that might not be necessary as part of a general direction, mostly because we do have in our engineering handbook and product handbook, what is the type of investments you need to make, right? Like if it's 5x investment, you need to build it yourself.
Okay, yeah.
So I think like if we align to that as a general part of the process, then I think we can have that on the team level, right? Like a decision on the team level.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
If you actually get a brainwave that is like a great idea about like how to rename commit to release, I didn't want, like, now that you've said it, Andrew, idea to production, like it literally reminds me of that, which is not what I wanted when I was thinking about this.
I mean, you'll win a lot of points with at an executive level, right?
That's not what I wanted to do, though.
I know, but it's just a little aside.
Yeah, it is. I'll try to think through a bit of that last part, but I think we are more or less aligned on this. Like it is future setting and more. How do we put that? Like interesting idea works type of thing, because there is quite a lot of things that need to happen before we can actually enable any self-servicing anywhere, actually. Cool. And then the second point, increase use and accuracy of platform team metrics and feed them into enablement processes. So that was pretty much aligned to the discussion we had last time, which was who's going to own the infra dev processes, capacity planning. All of those items are the enablement processes, basically. And then with delivery, putting in motion the deployment SLO. But the deployment SLO, I think, as it was mentioned in one of those comments, I forgot who exactly was mentioning it, but they were saying that we miss a lot of small details about the deployment SLO. We have this one end to another end, but it doesn't really cover everything, nor we know what goes in there. So we only have the last part of the deployment SLO, which is what is in our infrastructure. And we have this whole section beforehand that goes into deployment, but is not counted in there. So we need to find a way to expand that and have an idea of the end-to-end pipeline when it comes to deployment. Which means that, right, like that's, first of all, we'll need to establish that, and then we'll need to establish it as regular driver, like we had with MTTP, for example. This is specifically for delivery. But then one item that I've been thinking about is how are we going to ensure that we stay on top of capacity planning, and how are we going to measure that our capacity planning process is efficient as well? So we'll have to figure that one as well. It's not going to only be Tamland. I would assume so, because Tamland only gives you one data point. We also need to measure like how we react to whatever Tamland gives us, or whatever other input we get, like from incidents and so on. So we'll have to think about that.
Those are like human process measurements, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just on the deployment SLO, like I know we spoke about this in our one-to-one earlier, Maren, but like I think it's really like deployment SLO, we can't really get the big benefit out of it until we have it in staging as well. And we have that earlier. And that was kind of one of the reasons why I think we should really be focusing on improving the staging environment to the point where it's not just terrible, at the moment, deployment SLO and staging is like unusable because of the quality of staging. And, you know, like if we're only using that for Canary to production, from Canary to main stage in production, it's like really kind of too late. Like we need to be kind of bringing that forward and stopping things at staging with that if possible.
Yeah.
So I know we spoke about it, you know, there's a who's responsible for this is kind of a problem, but I do think it kind of ties in with that quite strongly.
Yeah, it definitely does. Alessia and I have been talking a lot about, like, we would like to, so at the moment, Quality are adding in lots of tests and new test suites to cover a lot of the risks. It's great short term, but it means the pipeline just getting longer and more brittle. So we would love to be able to start getting SLIs, SLOs in place so that we can start then scaling back on those tests.
Yeah, and it's not only that part, right? Like that's what I was saying a bit earlier, Andrew, right? Like it's not only about
like the packaging and picking and all of those pieces as well. Yeah, for sure.
From the moment we know that we need to deploy something, so that's one commit that we want to deploy, for example, that's the moment we should start measuring. So from the moment where, you know, someone clicked approve and is ready to merge is when the pipeline starts running, which is, you know, we have the QA tests that run for 1 hour and God knows what else, right? And all of that goes into the whole deployment process, right? Because let me put it differently. So when we have our incidents, and when someone comes in and asks us, can we revert this or can we fix this? How much time will this take?
Yeah.
I need to know by going to a dashboard, telling them this is the average we have for once you have the commit ready to actually production. Right now, what all of us keep saying is, well, it's going to take an hour for run a pipeline and then maybe 2 to 3 hours to do staging and maybe, and there is no end-to-end time that we need to measure.
I mean, really, that's MTTP, right? So it, like, you know, that is from the merge to production, that's going to be the average time it takes. People just don't like it because it's very high. But yeah, there are definitely some gaps that we don't have, like you can't easily see for sure.
Right. But again, talking about deployment SLO, so this is a measure of the end-to-end pipeline, right? But then you also need to know what is happening in there in order to know what exactly to improve, because right now we are just keep guessing.
So I think that there's a slight mismatch between what I'm referring to as deployment SLO and what you're referring to as deployment SLO, Maren. What I'm referring to is the service level indicators of the service running in staging. So it's been deployed, you know, it's staging, Canary, and main stage, and it's a blocker gate. It's the work that Alessio did that basically blocks, if it goes below a threshold, it stops the deployment. It's basically a gate, an automatic gate. And I think you are talking more about.
Actually, now I realize I can interrupt you right now. Like I can call this delivery SLO. It doesn't have to be deployment SLO. This is delivery SLO that I'm asking for, basically. Right? Like objectives for each and every single block of work the delivery team is doing, whether delivery is fully responsible for it or not, that will inform us where do we need to go to cut some of the time in order to gain the speed so that we can actually address the MTTP properly.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting, Andrew, but I realized, like, as soon as you said like where you're going, I was like, yep, I see where.
Cool. Yeah.
And we do need both. They're both important. Like they're both like in awareness, but yeah, we haven't got both of them.
Is that actually not technically a delivery SLA? Because it's kind of like the service level agreement that we as a team are defining ourselves to kind of adhere to. It's like it's kind of like a more human orientated thing rather than, you know, an SLO is like a very technical term. So we don't want to get into the SLA, SLO, SLI thing again.
We can go and discuss that, but the point is, if the three of us are already confused about this, we need to ensure that the teams are aligned on this across. So
exactly.
And like obviously Rachel not being here means that we don't have the scalability item as represented as I was hoping, but I think this is where you know, this specific item, so the increased use and accuracy of platform metrics, has a lot to do with scalability as well, because that measure will have to come from scalability as well in how we you know, react to capacity changes, sudden or not sudden.
Yeah, we have very primitive kind of like visibility when we're deploying. Like we only look at very small numbers of indicators. Like getting that to be broader would definitely help on knowing, like, is the deployment causing extra problems or is it fine?
Yeah, cool. But I think from your reactions, I'm thinking at least that I see that there is an alignment to this one item as well. Cool. I think based on what everyone said in the one-on-one issue, like it's going to be fairly simple to create a bunch of specifically team-oriented tasks. Cool. Item 3 is about growth and cost concerns. So increase GitLab.com resilience to planned and unplanned growth while keeping the cost of running the platform in check. I didn't know how to say this in Czech differently. So if you have a better way of formulating it, let me know. It might as well be this as well. However, what I was wanting to put under those items are, it feels to me like all of the discussion about Redis and Sidekick being horizontally scalable, I think no one disagrees with that, Andrew. I think you saw in the comments that there is no resistance basically to that, which I think it makes total sense for us to focus on. I thought one of the comments, and again, I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, but I think it might have been like Matt and Jakob in their own ways mentioned something, which is, well, we can't only be focusing on the horizontal side, right? Like we can't be infinitely just adding new things. We also have to think about the performance and how we react to unexpected growth. Don't want to say abuse, but unexpected growth. And I think this is a very good point.
Mentioned that we should also be able to kind of accommodate or embrace our users instead of like defending against them, I think was one of Jakob's comments.
Yeah, and that would kind of allow us to focus on an item that was mentioned by the delivery team, which was we don't have a good story around our Kubernetes clusters, how we are utilizing it, what we are doing with that. I think that's both scalability and delivery concern. It's not only delivery concern.
We have to be able to spin up new clusters. Like we're going to run out of time on that at some point. So
yeah. So I think that is important to be a combo delivery scalability work, because it addresses similar space in a slightly different way. And then the item about addressing the unexpected usage, I think that Matt raised, I think that is primarily scalability item, right? Like making sure that when we are under attack, that our application is more robust to those spikes. So some more isolation between services or some more isolation between categories or something.
Yeah, there was some talk in delivery previously about improving the metrics we're using for scaling and things like that. So we're not super efficient on all of the things we've migrated.
Right.
So basically, we're not even efficient probably on some of them, right? Like,
yeah, because like what we did was basically borderline lift and shift. So lift from VMs and move to Kubernetes, but in no way we went back to take a look at, should we scale on CPU? Should we scale on memory? Like what are the thresholds and so on? And all of that also I think needs to come from scalability, not only delivery.
Yeah, that would help.
Cool. Any comments on that? I think like it's kind of clear what, to me at least, it feels like it's clear what we can align under these items, right? Like it enables us to actually do quite a lot there.
So obviously Davis has departed, and it's not totally clear to me like who's doing the cost side of things at the moment, and that's one of the big kind of cornerstones of this, presumably. So it's something to think about. I know there's someone who started called Lily, but like I don't know how easy it is to kind of do those analytics into like where we're spending money on Google Cloud, for example.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I think from our side, we probably want to start something fairly simple and robust for our own uses and not necessarily depend on another department there.
That could probably tie in with that data work that I mentioned, because it would just be another kind of BigQuery instance, because that data is all already in BigQuery, and it's just a matter of kind of querying it and giving people access to be able to look at it.
Yeah, that might depend on how we end up organizing scalability teams, like whether there is going to be enough room for us to take a look at some of those items. I'm not against it. I'm just a bit concerned that we might not have enough expertise apart from yourself in this, Andrew, and that training someone would take even more time. And if we actually need to do that while we have some low-hanging fruit that we can pick up, like for example, as I mentioned earlier, we know that we are fairly inefficient with our clusters, right? Like we only need to know the start price, like how much money we are spending right now, and start doing some work and see which direction it takes us. It doesn't have to be a super precise metric to do that. And in the meantime, I'm kind of hoping that there is going to be a clearer need from the product side as well to have those tools readily available for everyone. So they might find a way to support former Davis's function better. I don't know how that is going to look like. It's not in my view, so I don't know. So I don't disagree with you, Andrew, there. It's just I don't know how to do that currently with what we have allocated and the skill set we have.
I think we also have quite a few other things that link into here. Like we've got Redis, it's not a small thing. And just say like trying to get a cluster that can actually spin up is also probably not a small project. So we've got a few things I think that we can immediately pick up without having to answer that. And metrics is probably the biggest one, right? Even if we have cost stuff, we actually don't have great metrics on any of the clusters.
Cool. And finally, number 4. This one I struggled the most with, because what I wanted to actually say is I want everyone to be happy in the sub department as much as possible. I don't want to write that as a direction. Make everyone happy doesn't feel like something that is actionable immediately. So I ended up focusing on the engagement surveys, because engagement surveys are at least a tool that we have at our disposal that will allow us to know, are we going in the right direction or not? And specifically for this, if I think about, how do we consistently achieve highest engagement survey results, I guess, not marks, results in engineering? That would be through not overworking people, which means hiring is a big team, and that aligns with the fact that we'll have to hire a lot. And then continuing to talk with everyone individually around what their goals for their career are, how does that align with what we have and what we will have in platform, and keeping everyone updated on what is actually being achieved as part of platform, but then also how does that relate to infrastructure as a whole, engineering as a whole, and just making sure that the information is flowing between the teams. So that's where I was going with this, but I'm open to different suggestions on this one.
I like it as a measure. Like, you know, it is the kind of the indication of how happy people are. I wonder about the kind of the highest engagement surveys in engineering, whether, like, I mean, sabotaging all the other departments, right? We could achieve this without necessarily doing anything ourselves, right? I'm wondering if there's something like I don't know, like maintain or improve our results, or something like that is more kind of reflective of where we are, and that we can fully control.
I know what you're trying to say, but I'm not trying to protect here against, you know, us abusing this direction to our own advantage, right? Like, if we go down that route, I can easily say, well, we're just going to tell everyone to give us the highest mark, and that's it, right? Yeah. That's how we achieve this, which is not something that we want to do. Like, it's more about listening to the feedback that we are getting from teams, and then doing the legwork with more managers. I'm kind of hoping that's going to be a bit easier to do, doing the legwork of actually trying to understand why are we going in this direction, are we missing something, and what are we missing, and so on, right? So this is more of a, we know that we as infrastructure are quite low in engineering, actually the lowest in engineering. So if we in platform end up being that motor that is going to try to bring infrastructure higher up, then this is successful for all of us, I think. But then again, on the individual level, even further. So that's what I'm trying to optimize here for, rather than how are we going to trick the metric, or rather the result here. Like, that's not really interesting.
It sort of feels a little bit to me like I feel like it might be encouraging a division between ourselves and maybe specifically the reliability teams, and kind of being I don't want to, it's like we want to be better than them. I don't know how you put that in a kind of, like, to be really blunt about it. Like, I don't want people to think that it's like we are kind of competing against the other teams to be better than, you know, like, how do you do that, and how do you say that in a way that is kind of, we're all pulling together and we are optimizing for global maxima?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. This is one of the reasons why I specifically didn't mention platform in this one. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to align this one to infrastructure level one, which will be something like team happiness.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is why I'm specifically not mentioning, like, platform is consistently like the highest achiever in engineering. That's not going to work. I'm aware of that. But I see your point about competition. Like, that's not the point I'm trying to make.
Exactly.
Here.
But it might be, but someone might
read like that.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I just want to figure out, like, how do I, like, show the trend that I want to see, right? Like, where we are in infrastructure right now, the lowest in engineering, and I want us to not be the lowest anymore, and use that as because engagement surveys are the only tool we currently have to actually measure this.
Yeah. What about if we compete against ourselves and we say that we're gonna strive to, you know, increase satisfaction by 25% compared to last year, or 50%, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And rather compete against ourselves rather than compete against others.
I think that's a great idea.
And if we happen to beat everyone else, well, that's great as well. But, like,
that's a great point.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like your PB, right?
Yeah.
Achievement service PB.
Does it come with a medal?
Always.
This is going to be the toughest of all these themes.
Yes, because it involves directly humans, and I cannot measure humans just yet. So something like this, Andrew, achieve 50. I just slammed the number there. We can change it, but achieve 50% increase in engagement survey results compared to the previous year. So we're competing with ourselves. Yeah, I think that's a good call out.
And I think the way you have to do that is, I mean, I don't want to tell you how to manage, but like it's got to be like something that's in everyone's one-to-ones, like regularly. So that it's not just, you can't optimize on one survey, right? Like that's one sample. We've got to almost have like many engagement surveys.
So that's what I asked.
Can we do that?
Yeah. So I asked Rachel and Amy previously about that. Amy, if you recall, last year, and the problem here is that just adds so much more work, right, on people who are already overextended. So I'm kind of hoping with the 2 more managers coming in, it'll be easier to split that across, right? Like, and we'll have.
Could we have a SurveyMonkey 3-question like survey every month, like 3 questions, like.
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
And the winner wins a prize, and there's like a random lottery. If you join in, you get, I don't know.
I mean, my only concern about engagement surveys is what we don't do a lot of is respond to them.
Yeah.
So I think the last 2 we've yet taken action for. It's fully on me as well, right? I've got it sitting on my to-do list and I just haven't got around to it, but I worry a little bit about increasing frequency. Like, obviously it's good that you have small, but also it puts that we have to also follow up on them.
Yeah.
Right, but if it's something low entry, Amy, right? Like
of course,
between the 4 of us, we can do even a triage and say, you know, this quarter you're responsible for setting this up, getting people on board, right? Like repeating the message and so on, collecting the result, presenting the results, and setting what are we going to do about it in the next quarter. Like it could be something like that, something fairly simple. That's also a good idea.
And if it's kind of like a 3 1-to-10s with no feedback, you know, because if there's like a sort of thing where people are giving like long descriptions of the problems they're seeing or whatever, then, you know, it's much more imperative that we kind of respond to that. But if it's a very short survey with like 3, you know, rate this between 1 and 10 or whatever we choose, then it's much more just a kind of get the feeling, and is it going up or down, and then you know, I don't know.
Yeah, and Amy, to your point about the item being in the list and keep, you know, like staying there, it's because it's a lot of work, right? Like it's a large chunk of data you need to untangle, and that's why you're. I mean, I'm not saying about you, I'm saying about me. Like it sits there, and I know I need to sit down and dedicate a couple of hours to it, but I can't find those couple of hours. So it just stands there until I find a Friday.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's much bigger. Yeah. I've worked in a previous place where we had like a tiny weekly, it was like a Slack thing. It was an emoji response. And that worked. It had some major problems, but and the concept of this, of just regular check-in and small actions, it worked pretty well.
This is a question for both of you, actually. What if we have staff plus participate in organizing this with the team? So actually pair it not on the level of managers, but actually have that as a function of, look, team, you have your peer there, right? Like peer, whether they're same level or not, they're in the same function as you, and they actually do want to collect some data they can provide to the managers for, you know, figuring out how to improve this and, you know, approaching the problem from 2 directions, not only from the management side, but also from leadership side.
I think that's great. I think we also bring in something a little bit about like making it more like actionable. Like I think a lot of the engagement survey is a kind of just a judgment, and I don't like, for example, we regularly score badly in that people have seen action, but I think it's really hard to get people involved in helping to set that action. So it'd be great to have people a bit more directly engaged in actually making the improvements as well.
Yep. Cool. Andrew, you wanted to say something?
No, I just think that if it is Staff Plus, it kind of ties in with Amy's point. Like there's got to be like a way to directly affect it, right? Because if you are, yeah, then the Staff Plus have to have like a, you know, if they're just collecting that information, sort of, are you suggesting that like they're asking people like in one-to-ones or in coffee break chats or whatever, how they're feeling, or what do you actually mean by Staff Plus to participate?
So the Staff Plus suggestion is that they are the ones handling the regular survey, right? Like if we go outside of the engagement survey to the point you made about more regular ones, have them be the ones take action of getting people to respond to this, right? Like, and Staff Plus they already have coffee chats with people. They can actually get a fairly good feeling throughout the discussion, like why is someone responding, encourage them if they want to respond, or take a non-official note that there is something wrong that we need to do, and then work with the managers on exposing what that might be.
I think as long as and I'm sure with the present crowd that's present, you know, Amy and Rachel and yourself, this is not a problem, but I'll just state it anyway. And I have no doubt that it won't be a problem. But then it's really important that if there is feedback through that it is acted on, because otherwise in future, then that'll also become just a channel like, oh, why should I even bother expressing it to you? Because, you know, again, there was no, you know, there has to be some that has to be taken seriously and
I agree. So the feedback would be, we've received this type of feedback. We are going to act on this, or we are not going to act on this because, right? Like that's the type of interaction I would like to see. And that automatically removes the engagement survey on the company level from the equation and actually just ends up being a measure of whether we are doing the right thing as aligned to the company or not.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we have, like, I'm going to put forward these 4 items as a general alignment item, and I'll put this in the handbook. What I'm going to do next is, after I put this in the handbook, I'll leave a note in the one-on-one issue, and I'm going to invite you, Amy, and Rachel, together with Andrew, to start up on the direction items for individual teams. So once we get the platform one set up, we have the individual team ones set up as well, where people can then contribute some specific projects they would like to see addressed throughout the year as it pertains to, you know, the higher level discussion. And that way we're going to close this issue. From that, it's kind of simpler to draw OKR items for quarters, actually, for all of them.
Makes sense.
And I'm going to try to do that today.
Okay, I was going to say, when are we aiming to have Q1 OKRs set by?
We should have had it last week.
I was going to say, it's today, right? Q1 starts.
Yeah, we should have had it last week. What I'm going to probably do is just place a placeholder for the end of the week, this week, and we'll have something submitted by the end of this week, even if it's not fully fleshed out. Right? Like, it can be a continuation of what we previously had, but it can also be something new.
Sounds good.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks both for your input. I'm going to share this with Rachel. I think it's important for her to also have a say in this. And yeah, let's see how this goes.